Hey, welcome. It's 2026. This is actually the first video that I'm recording in 2026. We did release a couple of videos already, those were recorded last year, but this is our first new one, and we want to do some things differently this year. We're going to do some guest segments, some different things. You can think about it more like a show called Let Me Explain You Something. Now, on Let Me Explain You Something, we want to have more entertainment. We're going to explain you things about real estate, about, maybe what's going on in the country pertaining to housing, things that will be interesting and educational that should be helpful for you. We're, like I said, going to bring in some guests, and we have our first guest today, zooming in from his home in New York, our real estate expert, Meganite. Welcome, Meganite. So, we've got some questions that we wanted to ask you to kind of get your take on real estate in 2026. So, first one's going to be predictions for the market. What we're hearing from our data people is that we're looking at a more normal market in 2026, that inventory is going to be higher, rates have started the year lower, hovering around the 6% mark, and that they should stay there or even get a little bit lower as the year goes on. They should be less volatile this year. So all of that combined, we're hearing, is going to give us more of a normal market as opposed to these super hot markets or volatile markets that we've seen in the past. What is your take on that, Meganite? Well, that's an interesting take, but we'd appreciate if you could maybe swear a little bit less, Meganite. We try to do a family-friendly program here. So moving on, we're hearing a lot of talk of government action to help with the real estate market this year. One of the ideas being floated is to limit institutional investors from buying single-family houses. However, some ideas like that don't really address the underlying problems because the data shows that institutional investors only buy about 1% of all of the homes sold in America. What do you think that government action might affect in real estate this year? Well, we try not to get too political here, but I understand your point on those issues. So we have one more question if you've got another minute. What impact do you think that AI will have on real estate brokerage in 2026? Do you think people are going to rely more on technology, utilizing tools like, Zestimate, home value estimates, or ChatGPT? Or do you think that they will lean more into the value of their human experts? I can tell this topic hit a nerve. It seems like you're getting kind of agitated, so maybe that's a good place for us to stop. Meganite, we really appreciate you joining us on the show today, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future. All right, so moving on. Today, for the real estate segment of this, diving into the Cambridge market, we really want to do more of a data analysis to kind of look at where we've come from, and that will maybe paint a picture of where we're going in 2026. So I'm going to look at my screen a little bit here, pull up some real estate data, but we crunched the numbers for property sales in 2024 using all MLS data and compared that to property sales in 2025 to see, what changed. And we limited this to just condos, single families, and multifamilies. And we crunched that data for each segment. And then we also looked at not just the properties that sold, but also some data on the properties that didn't sell to see, if that also gives us a little bit fuller of a picture. So starting with the single family listings, the average list price was up by about 15%. In 2024, properties, single families in Cambridge were listing at just over 2.5 million. In 2025, they were listing at just over 2.9 million. And actually, the average sale prices were up about 17%. Average sale price in 2024 was about 2.55, and average sale price in 2025 for single families was just a hair under 3 million. And looking at the difference between list price and sale price for single family homes, in 2024, there was about a 0.61% difference between what they listed for and what they sold for. So in general, they were going over asking, but not a tremendous amount over asking. Whereas in 2025, that list price versus sale price, it was about 2.7% difference. So the bidding wars, it looked like, were just a little bit hotter for single families in 2025 than 24. And actually, list price per square foot versus sale price per square foot. So in 2024, you're looking at about a 2% difference, whereas in 2025, it's about a 4% difference. So whenever you're looking at this data, you always have to put it in context. It's going to be different properties that are sold every year. So like the size of the properties is going to make a difference. And good example here, in 24, the average square footage of a single family home that's sold in Cambridge was about 2,600 square feet, whereas in 2025, that average square footage was almost 2,900 square feet, which is a 9% difference between the two. So that's going to affect your price per square foot. That's going to affect your listing price. So you just have to put more of those things into context. And then the general number that sold: 104 single family sales in 2024, 111 in 2025. So fairly similar, a difference of about 6.75%. When you look at the canceled and expired for single families from year to year, exact same number: 72 in 24, 72 in 25. The big difference here that I'm seeing is the list price between those two. So in 24, the average list price of a single family home that didn't sell, that was canceled or expired, was about 4.2 million, whereas in 25, the average list price of those same types of homes was about 3.6 million. So it's a 15% difference between the two. And another thing that's a little bit different is the average days on market before those listings were pulled. In 24, they were spending 88 days on market. In 25, they were spending 98 days on market. So sellers were a little bit more patient in 25, leaving them on a little bit longer. But these were less expensive homes that were not selling. You know, we'll see how that plays out in 26. Going into the condo listings, here, same thing with the number of units sold, fairly similar. 484 condos sold in 24, 490 sold in 25, very close. The average list price for a condo in Cambridge, there's a big difference here, going from about 1.1 million in 24 to about 1.2 million in 25 is a 10% difference. And then this is interesting here, the comparison of list price to sale price. So in 24, it's about a 0.48% difference between list and sale price for these condos, listing at about 1.105 and selling at 1.110. And the difference between list price per square foot and sale price per square foot, just a hair under a 1% over asking difference. But in 25, you saw these numbers change a fair bit in the other direction. Overall, on average, condos were selling for less than the asking price in 25, that it was about 0.28% difference below asking. And then the list price per square foot versus sale price per square foot was pretty flat, listing at $931 a square foot and selling at $931 a square foot. So that does speak to a weakening in the condo market. And this is kind of borne out too in the expired listings, that in 24, there were 226 condos that either were canceled or expired. In 2025, that number was 265. It's over 17% increase in the number of properties that were canceled or expired. And this too, with the pricing of them, you're going to see that same trend as you saw with the single families. In 24, the average list price of these canceled and expired condos was about 1.45. In 2025, the average list price of those is 1.295. So a drop of 10.75% in the average list price of a property that didn't sell in Cambridge. So that does speak to a little bit of a weakening of the condo market in that area. One interesting piece of data that comes out of this is the average days on market for these expired and canceled condos. In 24, they were on for 107 days. In 25, 99 days. So it's a decrease of 7% in the amount of time that sellers were leaving these condos on the market before pulling them. So it kind of speaks to sellers having a little bit less patience in 2025 than they did in 24. Moving on, the last category, we've got multifamily listings. So exact same number of properties sold in 24 and 25. You had 65 multifamilies in 24, 65 in 25. The ones that did sell were a lot bigger. Average square footage of a multifamily in 24 that sold in Cambridge, just under 3,600 square feet. In 25, it's over 4,000 square feet. Prices for the sold properties did go up by about 16%, from about 2.24 million in 24 to over 2.6 million in 25. These markets were not quite as competitive on average in 24 as the single family and condo markets. The list price versus sale price for multifamilies in Cambridge in 24 is about 1% under, although the list price per square foot versus sale price per square foot in 24 is a little over at 0.95% over asking. And then those trends continued into 25 for the multifamilies. The difference between list price and sale price is about 1% under asking for the multifamilies in 25. And the list price per square foot versus sale price per square foot was up. It's about 1.35% difference there. And this speaks to also, like, you need context for all of these things. The numbers are just averages, but they don't speak to every individual property sale. Some of these are going to go way over asking. Some of these are going to go a fair bit under asking. Some of them are going to sell around the asking price. And then you get these averages at the end of the year. So, you know, if you really want more specific data, we can always, dig further into these things and break it down by neighborhood if you're interested in that. And then for the multifamily expired and canceled listings, you had 47 expired or canceled in 24, 53 in 25, which is a almost 13% increase. And then here too, the difference in size in 24, the average size of a canceled or expired multifamily in Cambridge is about 7,300 square feet compared to 4,600 square feet in 25. This is one change between the other sectors. The average list price of these that got canceled in 24 was about 3.8 million. In 25, the average list price was about 4.3. So this is one category where those prices did increase for the canceled and expired listings. And they spent about the exact same time on market, about 75 days in 24 and 74 days in 25. So a lot of data on its own doesn't necessarily speak to what's going to happen in 26. As you dig into it and provide more context, it does offer some clues. One thing we're seeing nationwide is that condo markets are softening, in part because of rising insurance rates, rising maintenance costs. They're not inexpensive home buy that they used to be. And this is more pronounced in certain markets. If you're in the Florida market, obviously this is going to look different than if you're somewhere else, because insurance rates have really gone up a lot in that market. But even here around Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, we've noticed a softening in the condo market. And we don't know whether or not that will continue into 26, but it's certainly something to keep an eye on. If you've watched this far in the video, we really appreciate you sticking around to hear about this data. If you have any questions about any of this, more than happy to go over it with you and address some certain other segments that maybe we didn't touch on here. But we really look forward to making more of these videos for you in 26, and we look forward to talking to you soon.